everybody, it's Melissa Killeleagh. We're here in the studio with Jim Sinacropi at Finger Lakes One, and we're about to kick off a fun podcast today that's all about health and wellness, plants and happiness. You might not know how that all comes together, but it'll unfold here as we're sharing the stories of a few of our fabulous guests. So before we get going, because I don't always take the time to do this, I would like to introduce myself to you. If you're watching this and you already know me, then you can tune out and keep doing whatever it is you're doing right now. The dishes, chasing your child, whatever it might be. But if you don't know me and you want to know a little bit more about me, I am a full-time network marketing professional and coach. I'm also a yogi, full-time mom, and I live my life here in the Finger Lakes, upstate New York. Absolutely beautiful region. I've tried moving away. There's absolutely something in the water that brings me back every time. So right now I'm located in Seneca Falls, and I'm enjoying the transition, and I say transition, it started 3 years ago, from working the sort of corporate 9-to-5 life into a very unstructured work from home, work from phone, work for myself kind of lifestyle. And in that time, I have just had the amazing opportunity of developing relationships and connecting with other people around the planet over many different topics. And today's focus is really on health and wellness. But before we go there, I have to let you know that one of the things that really inspires me, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, is we have amongst us everyday heroes, the people who are doing great work because they have beautiful missions in this life. And that always inspires me. What also inspires me is when people come from such varied backgrounds that you would never expect them to be doing some of the things that they're doing, or they've got so many different skills and talents that you might wonder how they ever found their path to begin with. So for me, coming from 10 years in finance, transitioning into a very social career, I'm an introverted individual who recharges at home, reading books, writing. So walking down this road of network marketing or social marketing and being out and about and just creating relationship everywhere I go, that was quite a lifestyle change for me, but I absolutely love it. So the first person that we're going to be chatting with today on this journey of health and wellness, plants and happiness, is Heidi Lyndaker, who I had the pleasure of meeting last month at an open house at Yoga at Geneva Street, which is in Geneva, New York. If you want to check that out, they do have a Facebook page and great contact there. Lisa Genovese, she's amazing. But in the meantime, we're here with Heidi, and here's what I want you to know about her. This is a woman who is completely committed to total health and wellness. And when I say health and wellness, it's a world that just brings together so many different backgrounds, disciplines. So, I'm not even going to continue going on and on about her because we'd like to hear right from her because she's in the studio with us. So welcome, Heidi.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here.
I feel like a 5-year-old little girl being here. I'm super excited.
It's awesome. I just pictured, who was it, Lily Tomlin, who would sit in the chair?
Yeah.
We could have put you in pigtails and gave you a really big chair.
That would have been great. That would have been perfect.
That's awesome. So when I met you, we were at the yoga studio, and we were just getting to know each other for the first time. And one of the things that I loved was all of these different skill sets and talents that you have. So before we kind of dive into the interview, I'd love if you would share what you're currently doing right now and a little bit about your background and what led you there.
Okay. First of all, how long is this show?
I know, because I feel like you have 9 lives.
I could talk for an hour easily. So a little bit about my background. So by training, I'll start there. By training, I have a master's degree in nutrition and integrative health. I have another master's degree in herbal medicine, another master's degree in psychology, and I have a background. I have a black belt in martial arts, and I'm a registered yoga teacher and a certified personal trainer. I think I'm missing a couple here. I'm also certified in Reiki and hypnosis. So that's my training.
Awesome.
That's kind of
it's amazing.
The paper part.
It's pretty comprehensive.
Well, it's it's paper. Really, none of those degrees kind of taught me how to live. That's really comes from experience. So how I ended up doing what I'm doing. Like me to kind of start with those stories?
Yeah,
okay, so
absolutely.
I really have two kind of journeys that brought me to the same place. So I have a health journey, as many of us do, and I have a professional journey. Mm-hmm. So I'll begin with a professional journey. So I worked in New York City as a psychologist for about 10 years. I worked with all ages from 2 to adults. And what I was seeing during that career was a lot of children, being given labels and diagnoses, and a lot of adults also being diagnosed with labels, and really a lot of children being put on medications. Yeah. The parents that I worked with really didn't know what their options were. They didn't feel like they had any options, and they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know who else to turn to for information about maybe natural options. So a lot of kids were being kind of put on medication that was being pushed pretty hard. The other aspect was I was seeing a lot of adults with depression and really wanting to know what their natural alternatives were, but didn't know what that looked like. Right. And so then also being in the fitness industry, I was seeing a lot of individuals who were working so hard, coming to the gym, 6-7 days a week, doing lots of cardio, and not quite kind of getting past that plateau, not losing the weight that they wanted to lose. And so I realized in that field there was a missing component, right? So I was working as a personal trainer, and I knew that food was a huge piece of it. So I knew that nutrition and diet really played into it so much more than we realized. So it really, that kind of both of those components really I guess inspired me to go back to school and really understand more about natural alternatives and understand what I was, kind of the advice that I was giving people. And so then there's the health journey, right? And so
that's what you and I connected over,
yeah. And so many people have kind of stories about their health and frustrations about the kind of their experience that they're either going through or have gone through. And so let's see, it started, maybe back in 2006 or so. For about 3 days, I had what felt like a finger in my throat. And it got to the point where I couldn't swallow water. I was in, I wouldn't say excruciating pain, but when you can't swallow water, you also can't eat. And it was really scary for me. Yeah. So at that time, I wasn't sure what to do. I went to my doctor. He said, you've got acid reflux. And I thought, okay. I knew that. I'd been suffering with acid reflux for a long time, so I knew that. But I thought, boy, that's pretty severe. And so his recommendation, he, wrote me the prescription. Right. Handed it to me and said, here, take this. And, of course, I questioned, for how long? And his response was, well, probably for the rest of your life. So at this point, I'm 34, and I think to myself, he's got to be crazy. Yeah. I'm not taking this medication for the rest of my life. Right. There has to be an alternative. And so at that point, I did my own research. I actually didn't even fill the prescription. I didn't. I thought there's no way I'm taking something for the rest of my life. There's got to be a way that my body can heal. Yes. So I did my own research, and what I found was that all of the symptoms that I had had since I was a little kid. So I had had chronic sore throats. I had laryngitis probably about 3 times a year. And then up and through my 20s, I had chronic bronchitis. So I had bronchitis probably about 3 times a year. Every time I'd go to the doctor, get the prescription, being, handed the antibiotics. And so what I realized was all of these symptoms were all connected. So I was having heartburn, acid reflux. Some days I would be bent over, curled up in a ball and couldn't move. And all of those symptoms were related. They were all connected to my digestive tract. They were all connected to, not being able to digest well.
But how many people would never associate those kinds of symptoms?
No physician ever connected the dots for me. Mm-hmm. So I would go in and, they'd say it was allergies or, it's just take some Tums. So
what was the trigger?
So the trigger? So I had many triggers, as far as I mean, some of it was diet. What I really found in the end, what really brought that lump on in my throat was stress. And so part of what I do now, what I really focus on, is reconnecting people with their bodies, right? Because what was that lump telling me?
Right.
I was not taking the time to relax. I was not taking the time to kind of unwind. I was really stressed and wasn't doing anything about it. So there are, you know, nutrition components that help with healing, and then there's the stress aspect. So my story kind of really, both the health journey and professional, really brought me to where I am now.
I love it.
Well,
what I really absolutely admire about your story is, you know, your journey in both places bringing you, you know, to one road to travel here, required choices. It required choices to really listen to your body, to trust that you knew better than the doctors, which a lot of people get very fearful of because they think the doctor is the expert and I'm not going to go against their advice.
Right.
It required you to choose leaving a career in psychology to pursue a passion with this total health and wellness sort of philosophy. So name of your business, I know people can see it, you know, online, but is Synergy Health and Wellness, right? Which is so beautiful because that is the story of the synergy of your professional and health journeys. But it's also this synergy of all those different disciplines and modalities, if you will, which I think is absolutely incredible. So tell me, because what I loved, we got together, so for our viewers, our listeners, you guys, Heidi and I got together and we took a walk down by the canal and all around Seneca Falls. And one of the things that I loved is she understood that a huge part of people on their own health and wellness journeys is what goes on between our 2 ears. And I've talked about that on this show before, related to many other aspects of life, right? But when it comes to health and wellness, especially when you're talking about the guy, you know, who's trying to lose this weight and can't lose the weight, a lot of it is what's going on between the 2 ears, and it's the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And so that's where, you know, I was completely brought into, you know, your story because that lined up with mine, right? And that's truly what I believe. I mean, that's part of why I'm here in the studio, is because I love bringing people's stories out of them to share with the world. But some of our stories don't serve us. And we've got to rewrite them. We've got to, but before we can rewrite them, we have to know what they are. And I think so many of us are sort of functioning on autopilot. And I love the way you describe what's going on with the lump in the throat. The lump in the throat is telling you, hey, seriously, you got to slow down. You got to pay attention. Like you've got to take care of yourself. And, you know, the reality is we've got 90% of our society here, like, driving their cars, getting to work, doing the thing. Like, they're not stopping. They're not breathing. They're literally not breathing. Let alone taking care of themselves, right? So talk about that. Like, talk about that component, because I know the psychology career is, like, totally brought into all of that for that reason.
And part of the beauty of what I really focus on now, as opposed to when I was kind of in the world of psychology, is psychology really tries to lump everyone in boxes, right? So really what I do now, everyone is individual, and everyone has their own stories. And it's the value that we place on those stories, and do they serve us or are they detrimental to us, right? So, you know, say an individual, you know, I mean, I get people with headaches, right? And so I really... as you were saying about the, you know, kind of connecting with the body, and that's our teacher, you know, is that really paying attention when that headache comes on. You know, are you stressed out? Have you not been drinking water? Are you not breathing? So what kind of components are surrounding that? And then as far as the stories go, you know, a lot of people have stories surrounding food, surrounding their bodies, surrounding nutrition, surrounding their families, and really taking a look at kind of, rather than focusing where psychology really focuses on, let's talk about that story and let's just take it back and further back and further back, and then let's talk about that story every week. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't necessarily help move someone forward. What really helps moving someone forward is understanding that story and how it either serves them or doesn't serve them, right? Because we can talk about, our pains or what we went through, or I can talk about the lump in my throat and how horrible it was, or I can take that story and say, you know what, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to help other individuals with that, and I'm not going to live in that pain.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's super empowering to be able to teach other people too that, again, and not to keep focusing on that example, but to teach other people that, that lump in the throat is your teacher. Like you said, your body is your teacher, and you can learn something here. Rather than focusing on the aspect of I am in pain, it's, I'm listening to my body and I'm open to what my body is telling me. Right. But that's where choice comes in, right? Because I think it takes a certain kind of person to make the choice to step outside of the box and look at the big picture. Right. Because sometimes the thing that it's pointing at is not the thing we want to look at the time. Right. So it's like, no, like, shove that back in. Like I think about, and for those of you who don't know or practice yoga, this is fine, but I want to share this with you because I love it. But we think about the throat chakra, and owning your truth, right? So your truth at the time was like, you're stressed out, you need to pay attention, and it was time for you to step in and do that.
And my truth, and it's fantastic that you brought that up, Melissa, because at the time, the throat chakra has to do with communication and expressing our needs. And at the time that I had that, I was not expressing my needs. I was not communicating my frustration at work. And so, where does that show up in my body? On a kind of spiritual, energetic level, it shows up in my throat. So that was my body being wise and telling me in many ways, you need to listen, and internally your body needs to heal. So you need to focus on things that need to, nutrient deficiencies, and focus on herbs that are healing. So really, listening to our symptoms. Western medicine really teaches us a very kind of detrimental story. Western medicine teaches us, and this is not to say, there is a place for Western medicine. If I get in an accident, I certainly don't want to go to a nutritionist.
Broken arm.
I'm not going to a nutritionist or a massage therapist. Right. If I'm in an accident, acute care is irreplaceable. But Western medicine also kind of teaches us that when we have something, when we have a symptom, it's a problem. Rather than teaching us, your body is wise. And you're having a symptom because the internal kind of workings of your body are trying to speak to you. So that's the only way that your body can speak to you is through symptoms. Right. So what is your body telling you rather than what problem are you having and what pill do we throw at it? Right. So when we really kind of connect with understanding that we have a great wisdom here and listening to that, then, our bodies are capable of healing when we give it the right tools. And and that can be really complicated. Like when I did my own research, and from your story, when you do your own research, it can be overwhelming. And that's really why I wanted to go into this field, so that people don't have to feel alone and try to figure things out on Google, on their own. Right. That they have someone to go to who will kind of guide them through that.
Yeah. Not everyone will stay the course, right? Yes. That's a tough road to travel. I was super fortunate, and I'll share this story in a bit in the segment that would have been dedicated to men who make a difference. But I was super fortunate that right as I was at that critical moment where I was just ready to give up, when the doctors were telling me, like, we can't help you, we're sorry you're so sick, I was listening. I was tuning in. And I was like, I know there is a solution here. I know that our bodies are designed to heal. I've got to find the right person to listen, who understands with a trained ear what these things are saying to me. And I did, and I'll talk about my doctor in just a few moments. But super fortunate because he's very unlike a lot of other doctors in Western medicine.
Right.
Yeah, which is why I want to connect you guys.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to know, because I think that this is important for our viewers especially. Like so I know you do counseling and coaching around health and wellness, and you offer a lot of other services as well. Mm-hmm. But in your work and your journey, what are some of the common stories that you kind of run into? Or are there common stories? Because I know we're all so different. We're all so different.
No, stories are so individual. For instance, I had a client who, as we got talking, she had, many different kind of health things going on that we were working through and supporting her body and healing. And one of the things that was really holding her back from really being all that she could be and really getting to a place of healing, allowing herself to get to a place of healing, was a story that she had circling around in her head since she was, in her 20s. Her parents had kind of indicated that it wasn't okay for a woman to own a house unless she was married. And this one, and as we got talking, how did we get from nutrition to this story of her feeling like she wasn't worthy enough. She wasn't worthy to own a house unless she was married. And here she was, 60 years old, and had never been married and had never felt worthy of owning a house, which then translated to her health because she didn't feel worthy to spend the quality time on herself and really allow herself kind of the luxuries of healing and the luxuries of life. So, it seemed unrelated to health, and yet here it was circling around in her mind. And it wasn't until that moment that she realized this story that had been holding her back from really being happy and really having the things in life that she wanted. And that really kind of circles around. We suppress that, and that circles around, and it shows up in the body as illness. And so it really connected to a lot of what was going on with her, a seemingly very unrelated story to health.
Right.
So the stories are they're so different and they're so individual. I have individuals who, I would say probably a common story is the feeling like I have to finish my plate. As a little kid, I was taught I have to finish my plate.
Right.
I can't waste food.
Right.
And they will finish, and they feel like they have to.
Right.
And so, so that's often plays in with losing weight, is that feeling of, oh, but I can't waste this, or I have to finish it. Right. Rather than kind of listening to the body and understanding when you feel full.
Right. Right. That's amazing. I was one of those people who had that story. Yeah. And I remember thinking, well, I can just adjust what I serve myself when I'm at home, but I can't control what people do out in the world, right? So, and I ate out a lot at the time, right? I was living on the West Coast, and I ate my meals out almost every day. And the reality was like, oh, I could package up my food and hand that to a homeless person because we are just overrun with a problem with homelessness here. And I'm sure that person is going to be grateful to have that food. Just simple solutions when you unpack, what the story is all about. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how healing it is. And oftentimes, Melissa, people have stories about how busy they are, how they don't have time to cook, they don't have time to, make healthy meals, things like that. I just recently was speaking with a client, and he was recently diagnosed with diabetes, and he said, I don't want to be on the medication, I want to do it naturally. And yet his story was like, oh, well, we have to eat at the bandstands at the sporting events. Like, we can't eat healthy because we don't have time. Well, that, and as we were talking about it, he kind of paused and said, you know what? That's an excuse. That's the story I'm using to continue living the way that I am.
Right.
So yeah, it's, and when I think we realize the stories that we kind of live in, it's amazing how healing that can be once we really take the time to sort through them and then change our stories.
Absolutely.
It's really, one of the things that I learned from my late mentor, who is an amazing man, Bob Duggan, was that we are the ones who create our stories. We are the only ones who create our stories. So in every situation, we also have the ability to change that story.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
we can recreate the story, we can rewrite the story, and that's a big thing that I do work on with clients. For instance, to give you an example, I had a client who, had a long history of difficult family, difficult upbringing, difficult relationships, and she was really living in that story. This was a girl who was having seizures on a regular basis. She had significant immune issues. She was getting sick constantly. And we focused on, really recreating and rewriting that story, because she was living in a place of, pain and, people disappointing her. And really, she was a powerful woman. And so when we really focused on rewriting that story, she no longer has seizures. Her immune system is amazing. Wow. So she hasn't been sick in 6 months. And we worked together for 6 months. After 6 months, she is just absolutely amazing. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. It's, it's really taking the time to kind of rewrite that.
Yeah.
We have the ability to do that. So.
And that's it.
And
taking the time, investing the time, right? Like that's our greatest investment that we have in ourselves and each other.
It's
amazing.
True. Yeah.
So I know we're running out of time for our interview, but just to kind of wrap things up, guys, This is Heidi Lyndaker, Synergy Health and Wellness. This is a woman who is truly helping people on their own health and wellness journeys through food, through plants, through helping people connect to their bodies, through helping them discover, uncover, recover, and rewrite their stories. She does so very much to help people truly own their experience and their story in life. And I know you have an event coming up tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
Which brings one of those particular skill sets and talents into play.
Yeah.
So if you want to share a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. So I also teach self-defense seminars, which I'm very passionate about. Really empowering women is really important to me. And so I'm hosting a self-defense seminar, which is a 2-hour-long seminar, and it's at Transform Martial Arts, which is in the Tops Plaza of in Seneca Falls.
Okay.
And come and join me. It's no experience needed. It is fantastic. I wish every woman in the world would learn how to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
And I see exactly how that fits into the whole picture when it comes to empowerment and connection to your body, right, and your energy. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And we didn't even cover a fraction of all of the things that we could talk about. So I definitely want to have you back. So for our viewers, I know that Heidi will be back certainly a year from now to see how her business has transitioned and flourished, because she's currently making a transition in her life to be here in Seneca Falls full time. Before this, I'd say she's a little bit of a gypsy soul, traveling a lot. She loves travel, her and her husband.
So true, yeah.
And had been doing a lot of work out of the DC area. But it was so fun to stop and visit Heidi at her home, because if you're looking for her, she might be out, foraging and pulling plants from her yard to create a lot of this medicine that heals our body, right? So thank you again, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I so appreciate that you're having this show for everyone out there. It's really,
Thank you.
It's an amazing offering.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to circle back about my doctor and the whole concept that we were talking about, taking the time or investing the time in ourselves. So for anyone watching here, one of the people that I knew I needed to connect Heidi to in my life right now is the doctor who stepped in to help me in my own health and wellness journey, because he was just such a unique and rare individual. So back in 2013, 2014, I had come to the tail end of some fairly critical health issues. And when I say critical, I mean there were times when I would have to leave my full-time job to go over to Life Care and sit and be put on fluids because I had become severely dehydrated. And trust me, I was drinking plenty of water. Or, I would end up in the emergency room because I was doubled over in pain from what they thought was a gallbladder issue. All kinds of things were going on for me. And I literally sat in my doctor's office listening to her tell me, "I'm sorry, Melissa, but there's nothing else I can do for you." And I was in such bad shape and had, at that point, had so many colonoscopies and endoscopies. I mean, more at that time than most people have, by the time they're like 60, right? Even my specialist, my GI specialist, had given me her cell phone number because she felt bad and just knew that I needed somebody to talk to. So lo and behold, I ended up with a condition that was pre-diabetic. And so I was being given endocrinologist names, and I was offered two. One that was in, I believe, Clifton Springs area, and one in Auburn. And I was living in Auburn at the time, so I went to Auburn. And I ran into Sherwan Mirza, who is nothing shy of a miracle. This is a man who practices in endocrinology, but he has spent the last 20 years studying nutrition. And he spent an hour and 45 minutes on my first appointment. And so for those of you who don't understand the healthcare system right now and insurance and all that kind of stuff, just picture this, an hour and 45 minutes, and he's able to bill for maybe like a 15-minute increment, because that's what local providers are allowed. So he really listened. He took down, my entire history, all of my symptoms. And when I tell you that, 6 months from then, I felt like a whole new person, I mean it. We literally began the journey of healing my body with food, to the smallest of things, like, having a blood reading that says, hey, you're low in selenium, and he says, eat 3 Brazil nuts a day and come back in 4 months, right? Mm-hmm. And that certainly got rid of my brain fog. So it's amazing when we can find those people in our lives. And my intention is to connect this doctor with Heidi, because what happens is, he can't carry on for, years and years the way that he practices, because his practice would be shut down, right? Because he's not getting in revenue what he's giving in time by any means. But what I can tell you is that he has really focused and specialized on all of those people who kind of fall through the cracks, like the people diagnosed with things like chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia and celiac disease, and and that was me, and I hadn't got diagnosed. So every scope I had and every blood test I had prior to meeting him indicated that I didn't have celiac disease, but he found it. So pretty amazing. He has since diagnosed over 450 people in this area alone with some kind of gluten intolerance, if not celiac disease. So we know that so much of what is going on out there today has to do with like the quality of our food and all of that kind of thing, and that's like an entirely different show. But if there's anything that I wanted to have Heidi Lyndaker here as, a woman who makes this world a better place, and talk about Sherwan Mirza, a man who makes a difference in my life and out there in the community. If there's anything that I wanted to have them here for all of the viewers, it's to tell you not to give up hope, right? So if there's something that you're going through that's related to health and wellness, it's something that can be fixed. Right? It's something that, and you're not broken. I don't even like the language that I use around it. It's, you can learn to listen to your body, and you can learn to heal. So here we're going to transition to someone who is also as passionate about plants as Heidi. This is a woman who I met in an international mastermind group, Kimberly Kling, who I just had the pleasure of meeting for the first time out in California after working together for a year. And her journey into the world of plants and all the other work she does, I would say she specializes in joy, did not start that way. And it's interesting to me because even though this segment was designed to be out and about in the community, like our community is the world, you guys. Like the world gets smaller and smaller every single day, and we can access one another through social media, through internet. So here she is, Kimberly Kling, and I hope you enjoy her as much as I do. All right, everybody, we are here today with Kimberly Kling out of Arizona. And Kimberly and I met about a year ago virtually for the first time in person just about a week ago, which is pretty awesome. We were invited into a group that is known as the Own Your Humanity Tribe, where we are focused on helping other leaders and ourselves develop daily conscious leadership. So the reason why I wanted to chat with Kim is because she is a super amazing soul and very passionate about the things that she does, but her background wouldn't have necessarily led her to where she is today other than the passion that is within her. So Kim, if you would share with us a little bit about your background. I'm not going to share your reason why you're here until we get through that.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Melissa.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here.
Such an honor to be here. Yeah, so my background, originally I went to college for engineering, for structural engineering. And at the time I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was good at math and science, and it just sounded like a stable career path to follow. And I enjoyed school. So I got my degree in that, and then I started working as an automotive structural engineer. And I felt trapped being in an office all day. I felt like I wasn't fulfilling my soul's purpose, which at the time I didn't really know what that meant, but I did not like going to work, and I felt like I was wasting my days. So after working in that field a couple of years, I started to have a little bit of a breakdown because I didn't want to go into work every day. And one day I just decided to quit, that I would figure out, how to make money in the meantime, and that I needed to do something that I was passionate about. So that led me to working at the Desert Botanical Gardens in Phoenix, which was, it was an amazing job. I did school tours for elementary children, and
awesome.
Yeah. It was so fun. We would just take them all over the garden, and we had a curriculum that we would teach them. It was all laid out so that it went in line with what the teachers needed to teach for the accreditation and everything. And I had a blast with that, and that was when I learned about landscape architecture. So I decided to go back to school for landscape architecture in Tucson.
Very cool. Very cool. So the business that I came to know you for is Joyful Roots. And so for those of you who are not familiar, because many of you won't be, obviously, Kimberly is out of Arizona. We're going to drop the link in the comments to the podcast, and you'll actually see it underneath her name during the interview as well. But I came to know Kimberly for her art, which certainly is influenced by plants and nature for sure. But when I began following her on Instagram and just paying a little bit more attention to what she was doing even on Facebook, I realized that there was so much passion for plants, for plant medicine, just for being out with like your hands in the earth. And so I want you to share that. I want you to talk about that, Kimberly, because I think it's super amazing. And it's at a really poignant time in my life when I'm moving towards like a plant-based lifestyle. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about how you fell in love with plants. I mean, obviously the roots of that journey we just heard about, but tell us how it happened from there.
Okay. Well, when I was working at the Desert Botanical Gardens, I started to learn about ethnobotany, which is the way that people use plants, and became really interested in that. And then my love for plants just kept growing as I went through school for landscape architecture, and design was a huge part of landscape architecture school. So I was able to integrate my art, my love for art, and my love for plants into one profession.
Yeah.
And then I actually met my husband, and I moved down to Southern Arizona. And in order to practice as a landscape architect, I have to apprentice under someone for 2 years. But there aren't really any landscape architecture firms down here because we live in a small town. So I kind of started exploring landscape design and art and doing things on my own. Then I became a mother. And so I was trying to fit. Thank you. I was trying to fit, my creativity and my love of plants into my life while also being a mother. And I was having some health challenges as well. I've always had horrible allergies my whole life, and stomach problems and some other things. Like I was having really bad fatigue. So I went to some doctors, and nobody could really figure out what was wrong with me. And I just started to research and learned about a lot of different herbs that can help with these things I was experiencing, and started kind of experimenting on myself. And it was working.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the more I dove into learning about how plants can help heal us, the more I wanted to know, and I became a little bit obsessed, I guess you could say. There's so much to learn and so much amazing wisdom out there that we haven't really been taught, most of us anyway, haven't grown up with. If you talk to like some of the older generations, a lot of them have this wisdom that they haven't really passed down, because it seems like the younger generations are more disconnected from it and don't necessarily want to learn. But yeah, I just, it kind of stirred this passion inside of me, and I would like to learn as much as I can and eventually start being able to use that knowledge to help other people through herbalism and plant medicine.
Awesome. I love it. It's so interesting too, because this, like when I was saying that, it's so poignant. It's in so many ways, both as like a theme in my life, but also in these super tender moments. Like I had an amazing tour at our CSA farm, which is the Regal Farms in Seneca Falls, New York. This past weekend, I took Jack out, just to see where our food comes from. And the farm owner, Andrew, was like showing him little plants that he could eat, like clover, for example, and talking to him about how the cows like it. And it was so cool, because I think for myself, like growing up in the city, it was like, here's a flower, here's a weed, but like, then we learn all these amazing, powers of dandelion. So on my way out to the Redwoods to meet you for the very first time, it's over a week, right? But less than 2 weeks ago, I watched a movie. I wish I could remember the name of it. The reason why I got it was because I didn't have headphones. I couldn't wear them because Jack will just like rip them off my head. Oh, yeah. So I watched a movie that had subtitles, and it was like a Japanese film or something. And it was about how like there was this really famous guy who was into plants, but they were for display and design, and it was sort of like a craft that was passed down through the family. But the son didn't want to do that. He wanted to learn all about like every plant. He didn't just want these like prize winning species that were like, like the example would be like an orchid versus a dandelion, right? He wanted to like show the world the practical uses of all plants. And so he just spent like a year kind of being homeless and, taking pictures all around the countryside and showing people how to utilize plants in a different way. So pretty cool, because that sparked like a ton of interest for me. What I think is even more interesting, I love people who are so multifaceted like you, right? Because what's even more interesting is like, we hear this conversation and it starts to sound all kind of like scientific and stuff, but you have this amazing gift and heart for your craft of producing amazing art.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah. I can't wait to give people the link to go shop. Like, there's so much fun stuff. There's everything from, pillowcases to coffee mugs to prints that are amazing and will be part of a beautiful collaboration that's super top secret. We won't tell anyone. But talk a little bit about your inspiration for your art. I mean, I know a lot of it comes from nature, comes from plants, but like, how do you know when you want to make something? How does it come out of you? Like, how do you go through that creative process?
Well, I'm a very visual person. It's my first language. I think that I would rather put something on paper in visual form than actually speak about it most of the time. So it took me a while to learn that, but growing up, my grandmother was actually an artist and very into the art world. She lived in northern Michigan in a small town, and she used to teach art, and she had art all over her house. And when I would go visit her, she would take me to local art classes, and I think that definitely instilled a love in it, a love of art in me. Yeah, so let's see, where are we going with that? What was the main question?
just talking about your passion for art and the creative process, like how it happens. How does it make these things come alive?
Yeah, so I actually never got to study art formally, but when I was in high school, I had an amazing art teacher, Mr. Young, and he was just so passionate about teaching. And I learned a lot about the technical side of art. And when I started making art on my own, I kind of thought like I had to make things really realistic all the time, but I didn't necessarily enjoy that. It was kind of frustrating for me in a way. So a couple of years ago, I took an online class from an artist named Pam Garrison, and she talked about intuitive art, and she had some different courses that we did, and I just started experimenting with like her technique and then putting a little bit of my own technique into it, and fell in love because it was a way of making art where there were no expectations. So go into it, and it's almost like a meditation, like where you can just zone out and let whatever's coming out of you flow. So that was a complete shift for me in like what I thought art was, and it was a way of getting my emotions out into visual form, which for me, that's what art actually has always been, is more of a feeling than something that you can express through words necessarily.
Yeah. Well, and clearly you broke the boundaries of needing that realistic, sort of presentation, because a lot of what you do, as much as you can see the inspiration coming from nature and the world outdoors, it is more abstract. And sometimes there's some words incorporated, but it's never like, something concrete, right? It's, around these sort of inspirational ideas, to create, to imagine, to explore. So I can't wait for everyone to go check out your art, because it's just so amazing. And at some point over the next couple of podcasts, we'll reveal what that amazing collaboration will be. I love keeping secrets because I'm not good at it. So let me ask you then. You've got all these amazing talents. You've got this incredibly rich background. You've got a really rich current present reality out there on what you refer to as your Joyful Roots Ranch, right? So what next? What next?
Oh, I'm still exploring the edges of where art and plants intersect, and I have some ideas. I'm looking at how I can incorporate more plant medicine into what I'm doing artistically. And I don't know what form that's going to take yet, but I have a few ideas at least for like how I can integrate the two into my shop. But eventually I'd also like to get more out in the world and just like start getting dirty out there and maybe going to like some schools and helping them build food forests and community gardens and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a need in our town. As far as I know, none of the elementary schools or middle schools around here have any sort of gardens like that. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we might push the envelope for you and ask you to step out of your comfort zone just as early as this coming September. A girlfriend and I met this morning. She is part of my network marketing business on another team. She's not in my organization. And we are coming together to utilize a particular product line to launch these 30-day programs that have to do with like transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle.
Awesome.
But we want to add in components and dimensions that create fun and joyfulness and playfulness. Because what has happened is like with our nutrition line, people were focusing on the things that you have to be restricted from. Like I can't have gluten, I can't have this, I can't have that. Where we want to teach people to come from a place of like, look what you're working for, right? Instead of restriction, like conviction, the conviction to live that plant-based life. And so to do that, we want to play with art. We want to, have people be doing some reflection exercises. And, I know when we were up in the Redwoods, you had wanted to do a session on, nature journaling, so I just think that there is a great way to involve you during the course of that process, to have you come on and kind of be, a guest lecturer, if you will, in that particular space, if you're open to it. So we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So for those of you who are just checking in now, if you want to rewind and watch this interview, we are out and about, but we're not out and about in the Seneca Falls community. We're out and about in the world, hanging out with Kim Kling, who is Joyful Roots. If you want to go check out her work, this woman is not only becoming a master of plants and all of the amazing benefits they have to offer us, but also is a beautiful creator of art. And so look forward to future collaborations. You will see her name again for sure. So thank you so much for taking the time with us today, Kim.
Thank you, Melissa. You're amazing. I love what you're doing.
Oh my gosh.
So beautiful.
Love right back to you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kimberly Kling. She is such a dear soul, and actually she's part of my current mastermind group as well. I'm working with an international group called Catalyst that is organized by Maria Volovic, who's been on a previous episode. If you want to check that out, just let me know, because we are always looking for like-minded souls to come in and be the leaders in the world. So here's the deal. The thing about Kimberly that I fell in love with is the fact, like, you would never have expected her to transition from this life of looking for a job that is secure and stable, starting her education in structural engineering, committing all of that time and energy to a particular path in her life. And then now where you find her being her happiest is at home on the Joyful Roots Ranch, playing with plants, learning as much as she possibly can about plant medicine, and creating such incredible art. So on that note, I'd love to share her website with you, joyfulroots.com, and we're going to take a look here at some of the things she has to offer. So you can see the style that she has. She's truly not coming from that realistic place that she was taught when she had her brief introduction to formally learning art, because most of what she's done, she has self-taught. But she brings concepts here together that like awaken the soul, that ask you to dream, that ask you to engage in a playful way, in a joyful way, which is why she's Joyful Roots and brings so much happiness to this world. So we are going to leave you with this last image, if we can get to it. And if not, you can just play along at home at joyfulroots.com. But here's what I want you to think about. What are the things in life that inspire you? And what could you be doing differently to own your own story, to live your own best life, and to be your own everyday hero? Because that's the question I ask myself every day.